They tried to destroy him, a tech mogul, a rigged system, and a betrayal that shook the industry. But Ethan Carter won't go down without a fight. Who will win? Who will fall? Watch till the end to find out. Like and subscribe for more explosive stories. The invitation and the warning. The email came through at 4:47 p.m., just as Ethan Carter was about to shut down for the day. Subject: Invitation to the morning exchange. Ethan frowned, rolling his chair back as he opened the message. Mr. Carter, we'd love to have you as a guest on next week's segment discussing the rise of Black entrepreneurs in the tech industry. Your insights would be invaluable to our audience. That was it. Short, sweet, deceptively polite. Ethan leaned back, rubbing his jaw. He'd been in the game long enough to know that no mainstream talk show reached out to a Black CEO just to celebrate their success. No, they wanted a story, a controversy, a debate that would get clicks, ratings, and engagement. But what kind of story? He glanced at the large glass wall of his office, looking out over the city skyline. Neovat wasn't just another startup anymore. They had just secured a $250 million government contract, outbidding some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley and the defense sector. That wasn't luck. That was 10 years of relentless grind. And now suddenly, the morning exchange wanted to talk. His assistant, Lisa Monroe, walked in, carrying a tablet. Mid-30s, sharp as hell, and probably the only person who could get away with giving him a reality check. You're frowning. That's never good. Ethan turned the screen toward her. She skimmed the email and let out a low whistle. They're setting you up, she said without hesitation. Ethan smirked. That obvious? Lisa dropped into the chair across from him. Ethan, come on. They don't just happen to reach out after you land a government contract. They're going to play the "did you get this because you're Black" card. Then they'll cut it into a soundbite and let the internet eat you alive. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his hands together. He wasn't afraid of tough questions. He wasn't afraid of debate. But this wasn't just about him anymore. If he misstepped, if they twisted his words, Neovat's reputation was on the line. Their investors, their contracts, his entire team. Lisa crossed her arms. You don't need to do this. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. And let them control the narrative? No shot. Lisa leaned forward, eyes locked on his. Then you better be ready for war, because they are not bringing you on that show to play fair. Ethan tapped the armrest of his chair. He already knew that. The only question now was, who was behind this? Because the morning exchange didn't just decide to pull a hit piece. Someone wanted to see him fall, and he was going to find out who. 48 hours before the interview, Ethan sat in his dimly lit office, reviewing a thick folder Lisa had just placed on his desk. These are the names of the biggest players in tech lobbying against us, she said, tapping the folder. Ethan flipped it open. Familiar names, tech giants, old money, legacy corporations, all companies Neovat had just beaten for the government contract. You think one of them called the morning exchange? Ethan asked. Lisa sighed. I don't think. I know. She slid her phone across the desk. It was open to a leaked email, one sent by a high-level exec from Argonne Systems, a defense tech behemoth Neovat had outbid. We need to control the story before Carter becomes untouchable. We have connections. Use them. Ethan's jaw clenched. So this isn't just about me. It's about making sure a company like ours doesn't threaten theirs. Lisa nodded. They want you to mess up. They want one quote they can twist. One moment of weakness. Ethan exhaled through his nose. Then I won't give it to them. The night before the interview, the penthouse suite at the Whitmore was eerily silent as Ethan stood at the window, overlooking the Los Angeles skyline. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat on the table beside him. He wasn't a heavy drinker, but tonight he needed the burn. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan answered. Carter. A deep, gravelly voice came through. Turn down the interview. Ethan stiffened. Who the hell is this? A pause, then a chuckle. Consider it a friendly warning. You go on that show, things are going to get messy. The call ended. Ethan stared at his phone, then slowly placed it down. Lisa walked in, her eyes narrowing. Something wrong? Ethan let out a slow breath. Nothing I wasn't expecting. Lisa crossed her arms. You're still going, aren't you? He turned, giving her a slow nod. Now more than ever. Morning of the interview. The morning exchange studio was buzzing with activity when Ethan arrived. The green room was cold, sterile. An assistant handed him a microphone without looking him in the eye. A makeup artist dusted his face with powdered indifference. Ethan glanced at the screen in front of him, where the segment rundown was displayed. Coming up next, the black tech boom, talent or special treatment. His jaw tightened. They were coming for him. As he adjusted his tie, his phone buzzed. Lisa's text popped up on the screen. Just found something. Big. Call me now. Ethan frowned, but before he could react, the door to the studio opened. A young producer poked his head in. We're ready for you, Mr. Carter. Ethan took a deep breath and walked straight into the lion's den. Walking into the lion's den. The walk from the green room to the main set of The Morning Exchange felt longer than it should have. Ethan Carter adjusted his tie, his mind racing through every possible angle the show might take. He had done dozens of interviews before, but this one felt different. The warning call from last night still echoed in his head. Turn down the interview. Yeah, not a chance. As he stepped onto the brightly lit set, the cameras loomed like silent predators, tracking his every move. The sleek, modern aesthetic of the studio, soft blues, glass coffee table, carefully curated decor, was designed to put guests at ease. But Ethan wasn't fooled. This wasn't an interview. It was a stage for a takedown. Seated across from him was Madeline Walsh, the show's lead anchor, a woman known for her ability to destroy reputations with a single well-timed question. Her smile was polished, her posture effortless, but Ethan could see the glint in her eyes. She smelled blood. His. Mr. Carter, she began smoothly, welcome to the Morning Exchange. Appreciate you having me, Ethan said, keeping his tone measured. She leaned in slightly, flipping through her cue cards. Your company, Rewrote, has been making waves recently, especially after securing that massive government contract. Ethan nodded. We put in the work, built the best product, and outperformed the competition. Simple as that. Madeline smiled. Some would call it groundbreaking. A subtle pause. But others have questions. Here we go. Some industry experts suggest that companies like yours benefit from certain federal diversity incentives, she said, her tone carefully neutral. That agencies are looking to diversify their vendors, and perhaps this contract wasn't just about being the best, but about meeting a quota. Ethan let a beat pass before responding. He could feel the tension in the studio, the producers behind the cameras watching for a reaction. I've heard that argument before, he said, voice calm. Funny thing, though, when a black entrepreneur wins, it's special treatment. But when a company run by the same families for generations lands those same contracts, no one asks about their advantages. A noticeable shift in the air. The control room must have been scrambling. This was not the easy target they were expecting, but Madeline wasn't done. So you're saying race played no role in your success? She pressed. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Let me ask you this. When SpaceX won its NASA contracts, was it because Elon Musk met a diversity quota? When Jeff Bezos landed government deals for Blue Origin, was it because of his background? Or do we only ask that question when the CEO looks like me? Boom. A flicker of something in Madeline's expression. Surprise, maybe, but she recovered fast. Let's talk about that background, she pivoted. You grew up in Chicago, raised by a single mother, public school system, no Ivy League connections, yet somehow you've gone from that to securing deals that billion-dollar corporations failed to land. That's inspiring. Ethan gave a slow nod. He knew what was coming next. But some might wonder, Madeline continued, how does someone with no family connections get into these high-level circles? Did you have help? There it was. Ethan tilted his head slightly, considering his words. Help? Madeline's smile sharpened. A mentor, a program, something that gave you an extra push. Ethan exhaled. Help came in the form of working 3 jobs while getting my engineering degree. Help came in the form of sleeping in my office while building my first prototype because I couldn't afford rent. That's the help I got. Her lips pressed together for a fraction of a second. Then she went for the kill shot. The ambushed Madeline picked up a piece of paper from the table in front of her. Mr. Carter, before the show, we received an anonymous report. Ethan stiffened. Lisa. He should have called her back before stepping onto this set. Madeline continued. It claims that Neovate is currently under federal investigation for potential financial misrepresentation related to your government contract. The room went dead silent. A slow burn of anger crawled up Ethan's spine, but he kept his face unreadable. He had prepared for tough questions. He had not prepared for this. Care to comment? Madeline asked, her tone cool, composed, rehearsed. The producers knew. They had planned this. Ethan took a steady breath. I find it interesting that I'm hearing about this for the first time on live television. Madeline raised an eyebrow. So you deny the allegations? There's nothing to deny, Ethan said, his voice steady, because there's no investigation. Then why? Ethan cut her off. You're a journalist, right? Who's your source? A flicker of hesitation. Ethan pressed. Since you're airing an anonymous report, I assume you verified it. So tell me, who gave it to you? Madeline's expression remained neutral, but the energy in the studio had shifted. She wasn't expecting him to push back. This is a developing story, Mr. Carter, she said smoothly. We're just asking questions. Ethan smiled coldly. No, you're not. You're planting doubt. Madeline moved to speak again, but Ethan wasn't done. You see, it's funny, he said, turning slightly toward the cameras. A black CEO gets a contract, and suddenly people are digging for a reason why he didn't earn it. But when billion-dollar corporations secure those same deals, no one asks which senator's golf buddy signed off on it. A tense silence. Ethan turned back to Madeline. So let's be real about what's happening here. You're not investigating a story. You're helping someone push a narrative. She opened her mouth, but, do you know what else is funny? Ethan continued, his tone sharp. I had an anonymous source reach out to me too. Madeline blinked. Ethan slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Lisa, he said, his voice calm, controlled. Lisa's voice came through live on speakerphone. Ethan, I've been trying to reach you. I just got confirmation. The story about a federal investigation? Completely fabricated. It was leaked by a competitor. The audience gasped. Madeline's face went pale. The studio was in chaos. But Ethan? Ethan just smiled. Game over. The betrayal. When the floor collapses. The studio was in chaos. Ethan Carter sat in his chair, phone still in his hand, Lisa's voice ringing loud over the speakerphone. Ethan, I just got confirmation. The story about a federal investigation? Completely fabricated. It was leaked by a competitor. The audience gasped. The producers behind the cameras exchanged frantic glances. Even Madeline Walsh, the queen of composure, faltered for a fraction of a second before regaining her professional mask. Ethan knew what had just happened. They had tried to take him down, and they had failed. For the first time in the interview, he had control. He turned toward Madeline, leaning forward slightly. So, Madeline, I'll ask again. Who gave you this story? She hesitated. Then carefully she said, As a journalist, I protect my sources. Ethan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Convenient. Lisa's voice cut back in over the phone. Ethan, there's more. I just checked the documents they aired before bringing you on. Those supposed government reports? They're fake. Someone inside the media fed them a planted story to use against you. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Someone wasn't just trying to discredit him. Someone wanted to destroy him. And that someone had access to high-level internal documents. This wasn't just a hit piece. This was an inside job. The enemy within the moment the cameras cut to commercial break, the producers rushed onto the set, murmuring in hushed voices. Madeline removed her mic and stood up, her fake media smile replaced with an expression of barely controlled frustration. That wasn't how this was supposed to go, Ethan smirked. No, you mean I wasn't supposed to fight back? Before she could answer, Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time a text from Lisa. Call me now, urgent. Something was wrong, very wrong. Ethan stepped off the stage, walking toward a quieter part of the studio as he dialed Lisa. The moment she picked up, her voice was tight with anxiety. "Ethan, it's not just the morning exchange," she blurted out. "This is bigger. Someone inside Neovat is leaking information. Someone on our team sold you out." Ethan stopped mid-stride. His grip on his phone tightened. "Who?" Lisa hesitated. "I'm still confirming, but Ethan, there's more. I just checked your personal accounts. Someone is moving money through an offshore account in your name." A cold wave of realization crashed over him. They weren't just attacking him publicly. They were setting him up for something bigger. Fraud. If this went public, it wouldn't matter that the federal investigation was fake. The narrative would stick. A black CEO who got too far too fast. A government contract that didn't add up. And then the final nail in the coffin, financial irregularities that would prove his corruption. He was being framed. Ethan's mind was racing. This wasn't just a smear campaign. This was a takedown. Someone wanted him out of the picture, permanently. And that meant one thing. He had a traitor inside his own company. The meeting face-to-face with the traitor. Ethan didn't wait. Within an hour, he was back at Neovat's headquarters, walking straight into the executive boardroom. His entire leadership team was already there. Lisa had called an emergency meeting. The tension in the room was suffocating. Lisa stood at the front, a laptop open in front of her. "I ran the data," she said, her voice cold. "Only 2 people had access to the accounts where the offshore money was moved." She turned the screen toward the group. "And one of them is sitting in this room." Ethan scanned the faces of his executive team. He had built this company with them. Some had been with him since the beginning, and one of them was the enemy. Lisa clicked a button. The screen displayed a series of transactions. The moment Ethan saw the name, his stomach dropped. Michael Ford, his chief financial officer, his friend of 10 years. Michael leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. "This is bullshit," he said quickly. Lisa shook her head. "It's not. The data is clean. You authorized the offshore transfers, and the emails linking Neovat to the federal investigation? They came from your personal work account." The room went silent. Michael's hands curled into fists. "I can explain," Ethan cut him off. "Who paid you?" Michael's eyes flickered. "Ethan, who paid you?" Ethan's voice was sharper now, lethal. A long pause. Then finally Michael exhaled. "It was Argon Systems," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa sucked in a breath. Ethan felt a slow, burning rage settle in his chest. Argon. The same tech giant Neovat had outbid for the government contract. The same company that had leaked the fake federal investigation. And now they had his own CFO working against him. "You were my friend," Ethan said, his voice low. "I trusted you." Michael wouldn't meet his eyes. "I didn't have a choice," he muttered. You had a choice," Ethan cut him off. "And you chose to sell out the company we built. For what? A paycheck?" Michael swallowed hard. "It wasn't just money," he admitted. "They promised if I helped them, they'd make sure I landed somewhere safe when this all went down." Ethan's stomach twisted. They weren't just trying to destroy Neovat. They were preparing for when it was gone. Michael had been planning his exit strategy before the body was even cold. Ethan clenched his jaw. He wanted to rip Michael apart. But this wasn't the time. Not yet. Because if Argon thought this was over, they had another thing coming. Ethan turned to Lisa. "Shut down Michael's access to everything. Freeze his accounts. Get legal on this. Tonight." Michael's face drained of color. "Ethan." "You better pray I don't take this public," Ethan said coldly. "Because when I do, you won't just lose your job, you'll lose everything." Security entered the room. 2 guards. "Get him out of my building," Ethan ordered. Michael tried to protest, but the guards hauled him out of his chair, dragging him toward the exit. The moment the door shut behind him, Lisa turned to Ethan. "What now?" Ethan exhaled slowly, his fists still clenched. "Now," he said, voice steady, "now we go to war. Checkmate." The final move. Ethan Carter stood in his office, hands pressed against the glass wall as he looked out over the Los Angeles skyline. The city was alive, humming with electricity, But inside Neovate's headquarters, a storm was brewing. They tried to take him down, first with the hit piece on the morning exchange, then by planting fake financial fraud allegations, and finally by buying out his own CFO, the man he had trusted for a decade. They thought it was over. They thought they had won, but they had underestimated him. Lisa Monroe stood beside him, her face a mask of determination. I've traced everything back to Argon Systems. They paid Michael to sabotage us, but it doesn't stop there. They're buying off members of the board. They want Neovet dismantled. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of betrayal sitting heavy on his chest. I won't let them destroy what we built, he said, voice cold. We're going to hit them back, hard. Lisa crossed her arms. How? Ethan turned, his eyes burning with focus. We play by their rules, and then we break the game. The counterattack over the next 48 hours, Ethan and Lisa worked tirelessly. Emails, contracts, internal documents, everything. Neovate's security team dug deep into Michael's communications, tracing back every move he had made with Argon Systems. And then, they found it. A smoking gun. Buried in encrypted files was a direct link between Argon's CEO and a corrupt government official, someone inside the Department of Defense who had been feeding Argon privileged contract details. Illegal, unethical, and enough to bring the entire company crashing down. Lisa's hands shook as she stared at the screen. Jesus Christ, Ethan. This isn't just corporate sabotage. This is federal fraud. Ethan clenched his jaw. Exactly. And now we make them pay. Going public. The morning of the press conference, the world was already watching. The fallout from the morning exchange interview had been massive. Half the country had labeled Ethan a fraud, a diversity hire, a lucky entrepreneur who played the race card. The other half, they saw the setup. They saw how the media tried to break him and how he refused to fold. And now as Ethan stepped onto the stage, he was about to flip the entire narrative on its head. Flashes exploded from the cameras. Reporters whispered among themselves. The tension was palpable. Ethan took a deep breath, and then he dropped the bombshell. 2 days ago, I sat down for an interview where I was accused of fraud. What the media didn't tell you, what they didn't want you to know, is that the real fraud was happening somewhere else. The room went silent. Ethan held up a folder. Inside this file are emails, financial transactions, and direct proof that Argon Systems, one of the largest tech defense firms in the country, has been illegally bribing officials to win government contracts. Gasps, murmurs. He continued, voice steady. These documents prove that Argon not only tried to destroy Neovate, but that they have been rigging the system for years. And when they couldn't compete with us fairly, they resorted to corporate espionage, paying off members of my own company to sabotage us from the inside. He let the words settle. You want to talk about fairness? About merit? He scoffed. The same companies questioning whether I deserve my success have been cheating the system the entire time. Lisa, standing off to the side, watched as the press erupted. Reporters shouted questions. News stations cut into live coverage. This was the moment where Ethan Carter took back control. The aftermath within 6 hours, the news spread like wildfire. Argon's stock plummeted. The Department of Justice launched an official investigation into their contracts. Federal agents raided Argon's headquarters. By the end of the day, 2 executives resigned. And Michael Ford? Lisa smiled as she held up her phone. Looks like Michael just got subpoenaed. Ethan smirked. Karma moves fast. But the war wasn't over yet. The media tried to pivot the story, some outlets scrambling to downplay Neovate's victory. Others, they praised Ethan as the man who took on an empire and won. One final decision. 2 days later, Ethan stood in his office, staring out at the city. Lisa walked in, holding a document. You're not going to believe this. She placed it on his desk. Ethan picked it up, and his breath hitched. A government offer, a new contract. Neovate wasn't just surviving. They were about to expand. Lisa grinned. Looks like they don't want another scandal. They need you now. Ethan chuckled. Funny how that works. She raised an eyebrow. So what's the move? Take the contract and move on? Or? Ethan set the paper down. He thought about everything. The betrayals, the lies, the system designed to keep people like him out. And he thought about all the young black entrepreneurs watching this story unfold. If he walked away now, things might go back to business as usual. But if he stayed, if he pushed forward, he wouldn't just be another CEO. He'd be the one rewriting the rules. Ethan looked up at Lisa, determination in his eyes. "We don't just take the contract," he said. "We change the game." The end or the beginning? As Ethan Carter's story spread, it ignited a movement, a conversation about power, race, and who really controls the system. Some called him a hero, some called him arrogant, some hated him, but no one could ignore him. And in the end, that was the biggest victory of all. Do we play by the rules of a broken system, or do we rewrite them? You decide.